Ben Pierce on the Rover Tracker, and today I want to talk to you about ghouls. Specifically, I want to talk to you guys about Martian ghouls. Now, the Martian ghoul is not real. It's a concept that many people have had that Mars likes to eat up spacecraft. The nickname for this has become Mars Ghoul, because there's a perception that there's a high failure rate, and the truth is there is a pretty high failure rate. If you look at all spacecraft getting to Mars from all countries, the success rate is around 60%, which is absolutely abysmal. By far the worst of any planetary object, although Venus is somewhat on that same par. And there's been a lot of missions that have been sent to Mars. But there's more to the story here than commonly meets the eye, and I wanted to talk through that. The big concern is actually Russia. Russia or Soviet Union, I'm keeping those in the same category, launched a whole bunch of spacecraft at Mars, but they were having massive failures in their rockets in those age. And the truth is the statistics about getting to Mars are not nearly as bad as I was led to believe at one point in time. The truth is we've actually gotten quite good, and most of the recent missions have been successful. The only notable failures have been the Russian Phobos Grunt, the two ESA landers, Beagle and the ExoMars one, and the two spacecraft that NASA sent about 20 years ago, even the Climate Orbiter and the Polar Lander, both of which failed. But other than that, we've been pretty successful. Now, it's sometimes pretty hard to group different missions together. Sometimes you'll have a really unique one. Know that I'm including my definitions below. I'll talk a little bit about when I go through these. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, with the flyby missions. Now, I'm saying it's a flyby mission if you're intended to fly by Mars, but that is your only objective. If you're planning to fly by Mars on your way to somewhere else, then we're not going to count that in these numbers. So how do those numbers fare? First of all, the Soviet Union had 3 spacecraft that failed on launch to even get off the launch pad to Mars. And they had 4 that succeeded in getting off the launch pad and on their way to Mars. But they had some kind of a failure of the spacecraft as opposed to the rocket, and they never had a successful flyby ever. That's pretty bad. Okay, how about the United States? Well, we fared a little bit better. We had 1 launch failure. We had 3 successful ones that were older ones. We had 2 recent ones, the Marco probes. I'm kind of counting those into a different category. And that's it. We had no failures of the spacecraft once they were on their way to Mars. We were able to get the first pictures that were close up of Mars. Let's talk about landers, and I'm going to combine landers and rovers together into just one category. If they had a lander that had a separate rover, I'm going to consider that to be just one mission. I'm also going to count Phobos, and I'm going to count penetrator missions. These look pretty similar to the flyby statistics. Russia had a pretty bad history. They launched 2 that the rocket failed. They had 8 spacecraft that failed en route. They had 1 that actually landed and managed to function for at least a couple minutes before it completely died. It started to take a picture. You can see it here. It turns out they don't think this was actually a picture of the surface of Mars. There's a lot that goes into this. It turns out that the lander really worked well, but the orbiter that accompanied it did not work as well, and it went into a much, much higher orbit than it was supposed to. Because it went into this higher orbit than it was supposed to, then it wasn't able to get back in time. And Mars 3 was only battery powered. So this was really the only time window that they had. It wasn't very much, and unfortunately the mission didn't have any extra time, but it did work. It just so happens that that was the first mission to actually land on the surface of Mars, though. The United States has had 10 different attempts. Now of these 10 attempts, 8 of them were successful. 1 of them completely failed, the Mars Polar Lander, and there was also a penetrator mission that failed to contact because the host spacecraft died. But we've had actually a really successful getting onto Mars, and that's why I'm not too worried about Perseverance. We have a really good track record with that. ESA has 2 attempts, and they both failed during the landing, unfortunately, the Schiaparelli and the Beagle lander. Hopefully they can get their stuff figured out when they send the ExoMars rover. That's going to come out in, I think, 2 years. They're going to launch it roughly. It sounds like a really interesting mission. I wish them the best of luck. This is the area, though. It's pretty obvious that for whatever reason, the United States has done this, and I'm actually quite astounded at the number of countries that have attempted this, but only the United States has really had an unqualified success. Hopefully that'll change soon. We have a Chinese lander rover that's on its way now to Mars, and they may be the second ones to really do this. Although you really got to give credit to the Soviet mission. I wouldn't give any credit at all, except for it was the very first one. Very first time we got an image from a surface of another planet, even though it turns out that image was probably not very useful. Go figure. The last thing is the orbiters. Now, orbiters have a little bit more success than some of the other categories for several different players, so let's talk about them. The Soviets were the first people to attempt, as they were with most of the early milestones. They also had a number of launch failures. 4 of their rockets completely failed. It just happens. The successes that they had were two orbited. They had one that orbited, but it didn't last for very long. It only lasted for a couple of days, so we're calling that one a partial success. But they have actually managed to take some close-up pictures from Mars after all, despite having so many spacecraft. They've only had 2 unqualified successes during their time. So they've had really, really rotten luck when it's come to Mars. The United States has fared much better. We had 1 launch failure. We had 7 successes and 3 failures. There again, it happens, but we have a really good understanding, and quite frankly, we've been at Mars for like 20 years, continually having at least 1 spacecraft orbiting the planet, and we have a huge number of them right now. ESA also has 2 that were quite successful that are still working to this day, the Mars Express and the Trace Gas Orbiter, and JAXA had 1 that they sent, but it was unfortunately another failure. The bottom line is, though, if you take away the early launches, especially where Russia was just blowing up rockets left and right, the Soviet space program was considered so bad that anytime they were setting any kind of a milestone mission, they always sent them in pairs because they were pretty sure that one of them was going to fail. Finally, though, they were able to have a little bit of a success, but they have horrible statistics here. Of the 28 spacecraft that they had that they put on a rocket to send to Mars, 9 of them failed to launch. 15 of them failed when, at some point in time after they launched, but before they had mission success. They had 2 successful orbiters and 2 partial successful missions. And that's it. This is where the Martian Ghoul comes in. If there is a Martian Ghoul, then it lives in Russia. Sorry to those Russians who were out there, but it's true. The rest of the countries, though, have had much more success, much more in line with the typical success rate for these types of missions. The United States has had 2 launch failures, 20 successful missions, and 5 failures, so a success rate of around 70%. And again, if you take out the historical ones, it's quite a bit better. Most recent mission being the Mars Global Surveyor kind of kickstarted the renaissance in Mars exploration in the more recent decades. ESA has 2 successes and 2 failures, and JAXA has 1 that failed. And we have 3 more missions that are currently on their way there. Hopefully they'll all be successful and we'll start to add some new countries. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm really curious to see which one, the Chinese or the one from UAE, succeed in getting there first. It's going to be really interesting. Thank you guys very much for joining me. Let me know whatever questions or comments you guys have, and until next time, keep on tracking. Take care.